Every time I get a new Bible, I write the same thing in each one before I start reading it. I put right on the flyleaf a 500-year-old poem written by a prison convict that reads as a contradiction. Here's the poem. There was a man, and they called him mad. The more he gave, the more he had. The convict was John Bunyan, the author of Pilgrim's Progress. Think about that. The more he gave, the more he had. Doesn't make sense. It seems like a contradiction. The English language does this. We have some words and phrases in English that seem to make no sense at times and are almost contradictory. A ship carries cargo and a car carries shipments. You park on a driveway and you drive on a parkway. Why does your nose run and your feet smell? The man who invests all your money is called a broker. And why do doctors call what they do practice? Shouldn't they be good at it by now? Then there are words that are so far off describing the item. Can those items and their descriptions be that far off? This kind of thing happened to Jesus and the disciples. It happened just before Jesus went to the cross. Jesus and his disciples see the same event at the same time, but their definition of it is so far apart. It's not just silly, it's contradictory. It was silly as these words that I just read in phrases. So here's the story in Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 6. Jesus now proceeded to Bethany, to the home of Simon the leper. While he was eating, a woman came in with a bottle of a very expensive perfume and poured it over his head. The disciples were indignant. What a waste of good money, they said. Why, she could have sold it for a fortune and given it to the poor. Jesus knew what they were thinking and said, why are you criticizing her? For she has done a good thing to me. You will always have the poor among you, but you won't always have me. She has poured this perfume on me to prepare my body for burial, and she will always be remembered for this deed. The story of what she has done will be told throughout the whole world wherever the good news is preached. Here is the contradiction. The disciples' interpretation of this act is verse 8. What a waste. Jesus' interpretation of what the woman did is a good thing. These perspectives are all based on this woman's extravagant gift. All that went through my mind was, how can you be so far off? How can they be so far apart? Listen to the words of comparison. Two views of the same deed. One says waste, the other says good. Talk about being far apart. Can someone who has been with Jesus for 3 years still be that far off on something like this? Can I personally be with Jesus for almost 4 decades and still misinterpret and misdefine some event in life that badly? Can this happen to me? Or maybe is it happening to me? I heard one person say, you take this Jesus thing too seriously, to which the other person responded, well, I don't know about that, but what I do know is Jesus took me pretty seriously when he died for me on the cross. This woman took Jesus seriously and became the center of attention just days before the crucifixion. What did Jesus see in this act? What made it beautiful and significant? What made it a good thing? What did Jesus see that the disciples did not with this woman's gift? I think a couple things. One, it had the extravagance of God on it. It looked a lot like what God does. I like the word extravagance because the word means to spare no expense, a lack of restraint in using your resources. To be elaborate, God is extravagant. Always remember that. Not wasteful, but extravagant. Take creation for a moment. When God created, he was extravagant. He wasn't stingy. He could have created one star, but decided that that's not enough for outer space and loaded the heavens with hundreds of billions of them. Extravagance. Not a number you can count in a lifetime. Everything he created is with extravagance. Just insects, for example. He spoke and 10 million were created. 10 million species. Not 100, not 1,000. 2,500 variations of just ants. 300,000 species of beetles alone. Extravagance. 5 billion birds in the U.S. And then he got extravagant with their personalities. Some can fly 500 miles nonstop. A mallard duck, 60 miles per hour. Eagles, 100 miles per hour. And even a falcon, 180 miles per hour. Some he created to navigate by the stars. Over 10,000 species of birds. Over 28,000 species of fish. Listen close. This was God breaking his alabaster box for planet Earth to see his beauty. That's why Paul and even David say, when you look at the world around you, you can't miss God. I wonder if that's what Jesus praised this woman for. He saw it just like what the Father does, and that caught his attention. Here's a story from a little Catholic nun. I was speaking in California, and someone put a book in my room as a gift, and it was called In the Heart of the World. That nun was Mother Teresa. Let me just recount one of her stories. At a seminary in Bangalore, a nun once said to me, "Mother Teresa, you are spoiling the poor by giving them free things, and they're losing their human dignity." Mother Teresa responded this way: "When everyone was quiet, I said calmly, no one spoils us as much as God himself. See the wonderful gifts he has given to us freely? All of you have no glasses, yet all of you can see. If God were to take money for your sight, what would happen? Continually, we're breathing and living on oxygen we don't pay for. What would happen if God were to say, if you work 4 hours, I'll give you sunshine for 2 hours? How many of us would survive then? There are many congregations that spoil the rich. It's good to have one congregation in the name of the poor to spoil the poor." There was profound silence, and no one said a word after that. Jesus saw extravagance in this gift. Jesus saw himself in the gift. Another thought: it was giving the best with nothing left. It was common to offer a small amount of fragrant ointment to refresh the dinner guest. But Mary, this woman, goes beyond custom and common. She pours the whole vial on Jesus' head as if she were inaugurating a king to his office, or as Jesus would say later, preparing a body for burial. The Mark passage even puts a dollar amount on it. In Mark chapter 14, verses 4 and 5, it says, "Some were indignantly remarking to one another, 'Why has this perfume been wasted? For this perfume might have been sold for over 300 denarii. Think about that. That's what they scolded her for. 300 denarii is 1 year's wage. When was the last time you gave to God and nothing was left? It's not just money, it's worship, it's serving, it's sacrifice. In a conviction that would cost you friends, maybe a reputation, and maybe even a job. I think she got overwhelmed with Jesus and said everything. He gets everything because he deserves everything. God gave it all when he gave his son. And in just a few days, someone else was about to give it all with nothing left. Jesus was about to give his life. I think Jesus saw the character of God in this woman's gift. When I read this story, I think of the prayer of Jim Elliot, the 1960s martyr who prayed these words, which is very fitting. "Forgive me, God, for being so ordinary while claiming to know such an extraordinary God." This woman got it right. An extraordinary God deserves an extraordinary gift. I'm too ordinary. I need to be like this woman. Thank you for joining the 260 Journey.